Charlie from Red Blue Talk here. Channel's all about how politics and government impact people's lives. June 25, 2019, there was a four-way Democratic primary in Mount Vernon, New York. The winner was Sean Patterson Howard. The runner-up was incumbent Mayor Richard Thomas. He is suing the County Board of Election Commissioners because he believes the election was rigged. He goes on to explain of that, as well as why he believes that there's a underground government and a deep state that is making all progress in Mount Vernon practically impossible. Check it out. Like, subscribe, hit me up on DM, and I'll add you to the Red Blue Talk Facebook Messenger group. So, Mayor Richard Thomas,
Yes.
This is a July 4th Independence Day interview, several days post-primary. A lot has happened since Tuesday, June 25th. There was a Democratic four-way primary. The top vote getter has been announced by the Board of Elections now as Sean Patterson Howard. So just to kind of be specific, the high vote getter was Sean Patterson Howard with 2,384 votes. This is as announced yesterday. Richard Thomas, 2,175. So I'm talking to you today because you are suing the Board of Elections. You have a lawsuit that you have filed, and you are basically saying that this entire election process is broken and corrupt.
Well, I first want to, I do congratulate Sean on a great race. I think that she definitely put her heart into it, and she worked really hard. I acknowledge that she has, been a part of Mount Vernon's community, and she's had. We've had a relationship for a very long time, but professionally speaking, I think that the context of the race needs to be really focused on and kept into focus, because the reports from voters the day of the election, the feeling of things being tilted and someone's thumb on the scale just became ever more present, with consistent accounts of prime voters, people that vote in the primary, being told that they're not in the voting book, or their location of where they vote is different than when they voted for a decade. So those subtleties are real concerns, because it shows that there's something went wrong at the Board of Elections entering Election Day, along with some other, easy to disguise instances that appear to the average person. Oh, a voting machine broke down.
But this is not a subtlety. You filed a petition with the court. You're asking for a court review of paper ballots. You're asking for a full hand count. You are saying that the scanning machines are inherently flawed, and therefore the result cannot be trusted. You're asking for a review of the TIFF files. I should explain what a TIFF file is. A TIFF file is just an image. It's that document that you got when you voted, you filled in the bubbles, and you shoved it into the machine. The TIFF files, I'm assuming, are images of those
of the ballots, correct.
Right? And you are asking the court for an opportunity to look at every single one, because you believe that the outcome could be different, right?
That is a fact, because when you hear people say that they voted, but the count on the machine was different than the count of where they were in the book, and when you look and see that there are issues with people that, again, never moved or never changed party, never, they voted over the past few years, but they were not in the voting books, or they were changed locations. So and you just add these things up, and you just have to, question why. So we want to see the details, because the devil's in the details.
Okay. People showed up at the polls. They had voted before recently, and for some reason they were told, we have no record of you as a voter, right?
And just for people out there watching that are not familiar with elections, or not familiar with that kind of situation, let me just give you the sequence on what it takes to remove a voter from the voting books.
Yes. So the term's purge?
Purge.
Okay, now explain exactly what a purge is and how somebody can be purged.
So a purge is when a person or a voter is removed from the voting books. It can only happen as per state law after 4 years of not voting.
Now, time out. The book you're referring to, are you referring to the master list of voters that's maintained by the Board of Elections?
Yes.
Or are you referring to that actual book that contains your signature that you have to sign when you walk into the poll? Because your petition makes reference to problems with those books too.
Correct. So the master list of voters, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, this primary was only for Democrats. So registered Democrats that have been registered as Democrats for a long time, decades, let's just say, were told they were not on the master list or in the voting book at the poll. And again, while you may be on the master list, they have subcategories of active and inactive.
Yep.
And so the active voters make it into the book. The inactive ones somehow don't. And that's what we're trying to figure out. Who was determined to be inactive? What, if any, changes were made? And we do know that 2,022 people were actually purged in the year 2019.
What was that number?
2,022 people were purged in the year 2019.
Prior to your primary.
Prior to the primary.
2,000 people who were on the list when? 4 years ago?
They were on the list in 2018.
Okay.
But the question becomes, what is the makeup of that 2,022 people?
Right.
And when you look at the past 4 years in total, 11,000 people were removed from the voting list.
Right.
And we want to just see if there is any combination of people that voted within the past 4 years were removed between 2015 when they voted.
Okay, now
to today.
Time out. Some people should be purged because they haven't voted in a very long time. They may have moved, they may have died, or they may have just decided to never vote.
Now,
there is a process that allows them to be removed.
But there is a process. But the question we're asking is, if you voted in 2015, were you purged in 2019? And if you think about it, if you voted in 2015, you should not be purged in 2019. You should be purged in 2020 if you did not vote between 15 and 19. But more importantly, we just want to see if there are any errors and what is the scale of those errors. So 10% of 2,000 is 200. 10% of 11,000 is 1,100.
Right.
So if 1,100 people were purged improperly, that could have an impact on the election.
Your county board of elections commissioner, Reggie Lafayette, is saying that this is a frivolous lawsuit because there aren't enough affidavit ballots and absentee ballots to make a material difference in the outcome of the election. So you are looking for other fraud and other irregularities besides those numbers.
Correct.
Let me go over what some of those frauds and irregularities are.
Sure.
And I'm reading from your verified petition, paragraph 29. And it says, upon information belief, votes were cast by persons who signed the polling place registration book, but were not, in fact, the duly enrolled voter whose name they signed. Voting by such imposters is unlawful and fraudulent. You're saying people are showing up, they're not who they say they are.
That was reported not too long ago that happened, and we want to look and verify those signatures again.
Okay, upon information and belief, some enrolled Republican voters or other voters not enrolled in the Democratic Party whose names were in the poll books were given Democratic ballots, and they cast such ballots. This constitutes an irregularity under all of the case law.
Yeah, we want to look in the book and see the signatures.
Again, paragraph 36, evidence of public count or overage irregularities can only be uncovered by an examination of the poll books that will not be available for inspection until after the statute of limitations has expired.
Which is why we filed now.
Which is why you filed now. Paragraph 39, upon information and belief, based on anecdotal reports, some enrolled Democrats may have been purged from the voter rolls in error and only learned of such when their names did not appear on the poll books on the day of the primary election, which led to the goose chase, which you've alluded to publicly. They show up at the poll. They say, you're not registered to vote here. Go over there. They go over there, another poll, and there's nothing in the book. What's the lawsuit going to do?
But the red bag ballot issue is
Okay.
the biggest problem.
Okay,
Because
explain what the red bag is about.
so the red bag is referred to as an affidavit to ballot.
Right.
And what happens is if your name does not appear in the voting book and you insist that you are a voter, the poll workers are obligated to take your information and put it on an affidavit to ballot. They take those affidavits, which is a piece of paper,
Yep.
and put it in a red bag. They're obligated to share the amount of affidavit ballots. We just call them red bag ballots. They're obligated to share the amount throughout the day.
The number.
The number. They refuse to. And at the end of the night, when our poll workers, our poll watchers, sought to verify how many red bag ballots there were in each district, the poll workers said, "We're not telling you."
Mayor, I almost feel like there's more than one thing happening here. So, I mean, there's a lot to unravel with your election, and I think we've talked about the electioneering about as much as we can. The court's going to have to look at this.
Yeah, we want
right?
them to just take a look and
But
verify.
what I want to unpack here a little bit is the interrelationship between your allegations of election fraud and irregularities and the broader culture of conspiracy that you keep insisting is going on in Mount Vernon that have made it difficult or impossible at times for you to lead during the past 4 years. I'm talking about, rubber gloves in the DPW trucks. I'm talking about can't pay the gas bill so the trucks can't roll. I'm talking about the obstruction on the part of the city council that you've alluded to again and again on issue after issue. The delays in making progress on Memorial Field, and on and on and on. The lawsuits against the controller, the obstruction on the part of the controller, the inability of the Board of Estimate to come to consensus on a budget. Is this a part of that same thing? Because I guess there's two angles on this from my perspective. There's Richard Thomas, the young mayor trying to get things done, and fumbling as a result of inexperience and youth. And then there's Richard Thomas, who keeps on insisting, no, there's something wrong here. There's dirty politics at play that's preventing me from being able to do certain things. Now, it's possible that it's possible to be a not great leader. It's possible to be a bad chief executive, and also be accurate when you say that there's some kind of obstruction and there's some kind of invisible hand guiding these terrible choices in Mount Vernon. Can you unpack that for me? What's
Sure.
going on? Like what's the mysterious conspiracy that's causing these elections to run the way they do? That's causing all these other things to happen. What's the connection point?
So the connection point is money, power, and respect. That's it. It's about money, power, and respect. You got people that made a lot of money on the backs of the people of Mount Vernon. And that gravy train was just stopped. It was derailed when I became mayor.
And by you, or just because you became mayor?
No, by me.
Okay.
And I'll start with the street lights and our electric bill as a city. Municipalities are usually supposed to buy their electricity from New York State Power Authority. The city of Mount Vernon was purchasing electricity from some third-party energy company, which was charging us 3 times the rate of electricity.
Mm-hmm.
So that contract took about 1.5 years to get rid of. It just kept on mysteriously popping back up on our bill. And, once we finally got it off after some court actions, the taxpayers in Mount Vernon witnessed a saving of about $2 million. But those savings I was never able to access and use toward the cleanup of Memorial Field.
Okay.
That one move could have helped catapult Memorial Field back to life within 2 years.
So
but guess what? They fought me every step of the way.
So there were pigs feeding at the trough, and there were some specific examples. You just gave one.
Street light.
Street
Another
lights,
one
electric
is
bills.
Another one's the loans that they gave out for 40 years at a time with no interest, no payback, etc.
So you're a young mayor. You come in, you raise your hand, and you say, we don't need to be paying 3x the cost for electricity.
We can get it for cheaper from New York State.
And then what happens? And then there's a never-ending stream of retribution against you as a result?
That's just one example. So the more and more you move around and you think about, some of the other cost-saving measures. Let's go to Memorial Field for a moment. They paid $1.2 million to demolish the grandstands at Memorial Field.
Who's they?
The previous administration. Okay. It was never demolished, but yet they paid the bill. I paid $190,000. So in effect, I'm revealing the real cost of government. And every project that came before me, there were significant cost overruns. And I'm going the opposite direction. I'm looking to save and use the savings. And I can assure you, here's the final example, because this is what is going to happen next. The city council objected to funding the audit activities for the past 4 years. What municipality does that? When you look carefully and closely at the finances of the city, you see that there's significant amounts, millions of dollars in question. There was one write-down that I saw in the amount of $95 million. I'm trying to figure out where are these numbers coming from.
Come back to what you said at the beginning. Money, power, what was the third
and respect.
thing? Money, power, and respect. So you blew out money, power, and respect on multiple fronts. This is the story you're telling. Memorial Field, lighting, electricity.
There's no accident,
Various things.
You mess with people's money, you make some serious enemies.
Okay,
and
and you're saying all these other things that stem from it, right?
Because
the allegations.
Because the people that were put there, literally put there, were put there by the party. They were put there by the special interests. And I was put there by ordinary people. And as you can see, ordinary people are coming forward more and more with their concerns about what happened in this election. And you can see with the entire state sitting on my shoulders, coming after me for election issues that I was never, ever able to address because of how things played out. But nonetheless, here we are.
Yeah.
You have to really question what's going on with this system, and just know that there's a larger agenda. And I believe that the people of Mount Vernon must continue to insist to own their government and not be owned by their government.
I need you to unravel that for me. It sounds good. I think I know what you're getting at. But in this lawsuit to untangle the election, you are suing Reggie, Lafayette, Douglas Colety, and the commissioner. They are the commissioners of Westchester County Board of Elections. Reggie Lafayette is also your city chair. He didn't back you.
Yeah,
he didn't back you 4 years ago.
Or no.
Did he back you when you ran for city council?
He did.
Okay, so when you ran for mayor twice, he didn't support you. Now you're suing him. I need you to tell me what's going on there.
So, and this is where personally I always respect the personal relationships, but I have always made sure to separate personal from professional. And professionally speaking, the political approach of the old guard is something that I just don't agree with. And I think that there are ways where we can do things as a people to be more progressive and more positive. But when you're being pulled back and pushed down and threatened with all sorts of attacks that are hard to explain but easy to see, I can only tell you that I'm not pleased with how the dirty politics has, prevented Mount Vernon from moving forward. But what I will tell you is going to happen is you're going to see a coalescence of these political parties. When I mean by parties, the people, the different camps in Mount Vernon, because they now have no choice but to fix the problems that they made. This is natural leadership theory. They're going to do their best to try and blame it on me, but I think I've done a good enough job to demonstrate, be it through court orders or through the people voting, right?
Well, so
that these problems that were self-created by these obstructionists How they're going to create, how they're going to solve them is going to really tell, who's in charge of Mount Vernon. So let me just give you the example. The Mount Vernon has not completed its financial audits in 4 years. I have an executive MBA in finance from the Stern School of Business, top 3 business school in the country. You think for 1 second that I can't hire a consultant to finish an audit? No. The problem is they don't want that perspective questioning some of the numbers that are from the past.
Who's they?
Who's they? So here we go.
Before you answer, let me put a frame around that question, because again, the pattern here is that something doesn't happen right. Richard Thomas cries foul, and it ends up in court, and I don't exactly understand where this ends. In other words, and this you need to untangle this conspiracy. Are you, for example, you've got this indictment that you've got to start dealing with. I guess the jury selection begins next week in your.
And I don't know if I trust that process either, because you have to look at it. There are some dynamics there that really don't make any sense. But nonetheless, you just have to know that this is where the system, strikes back. And there are elected officials that are currently serving in Mount Vernon that never filed an election report. There are some that filed stuff that they admitted were egregious. Others, for example, there was an article, Ethics in the City, on the Yonkers Tribune, that laid out a series of questionable transactions. But guess what? Yeah. These people are protected by the system. I am a person that comes in that's trying to run Mount Vernon like a business, and I have. The numbers demonstrate that. Crime down 42%, property values are soaring right now. But set that aside for a moment. I just want to come back to untangle this quote-unquote conspiracy you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because just think about it. It's a routine activity every year to close your financial books, be it as a business or as a person doing your taxes. Every year, that's what you're supposed to do. So guess what? I was on the council for 4 years. I participated in the votes of the past, funding the audit activities. But for some reason, when I became mayor, the audit activities were never funded by the city council. Why? Why? Because I tried to hire a new auditing firm. Oh, we don't want to change auditing firms. No, you can't do that. Wait a minute, why not? These guys have been our auditors for 20 years. Mm-hmm. Common sense says you change every 5 years. Actually, federal law requires businesses to change auditors every 5 years. That's just what it is. Mm-hmm. But for some reason, it is okay for municipalities to never change their auditor. So I started out with that approach. And from then on, it was downhill. And that's where the fight started. And right now, the people that are doing some financial activities, some analysis on our books, have not been paid. We're trying to close the books. And I just want to be clear about this. I'm sorry, let's not leave out a detail. It took a court order to force the city council to vote to fund the audit activities for 2016. This order happened in February of 2019. So yes, I run the court to try and force them to do their job. And when you look at each court action that I've taken, it's been to force the council and the controller to do their jobs. I got 5, you can include this last one, 6 orders against them, but each order takes time to unravel and unpack. So I encourage everybody to just look at those court orders and see, I'm on fact. And the council and controller are all fiction. That's plain and simple. They can point to the mess, but messed up people will mess you up.
Somebody agrees with you, because this was a 4-way Democratic primary last Tuesday, and you came in within a couple hundred votes of winning, notwithstanding a indictment hanging over your head, notwithstanding disappointments with respect to Memorial Field and many other things, many other challenges. There are a significant number of people that pulled the lever for you.
Right.
So
I thank them for seeing through the BS.
There's some kind of story here, and I don't see that going away regardless of who the winner is.
And I think about the school district. it's shrouded in secrecy. They spent $110 million, $13 million of which went missing. But yet the state comptroller and the AG just say, hey, you know what, you guys should just put in some better controls. You know, $13 million is gone in the wind and all these other problems. One person did something with $1 million, totally bypassed the system, right? But they get this, you know, hey, you guys made some bad administrative choices. Me, they investigated my government. They went through everything. But yet, they, you know, so I'm just saying.
Gotta ask again, who's they in that sentence?
They, the powers that are upset that I'm focusing on people.
Who is that? Is that Reggie Lafayette?
Reggie Lafayette.
Is that some developer? Is that, who is that?
It's a network of interests, often referred to as the deep state, with a subsidiary called the Deep City Council.
Okay, so it's a deep state, but is the deep is it an underground government?
It is,
or is it the above ground government?
It's a combination of both, because you have to do the math, and that's why I keep coming back to money, power, respect. You do the math and see who is upset that they lost the ability to charge Mount Vernon 3 times the rate for electricity. Who's upset about that?
So you're telling me that this deep state has got you in a felony indictment. This deep state crushed your election. This deep state prevented Memorial Field from making an inch of progress in 4 years.
Think about the consequences of each of those actions. 1, let's start with Memorial Field and work backwards. Memorial Field, we're under an environmental mandate. It's clear as day. It says these are the steps you're supposed to take. It's state law. It spells out the time frame and the consequences, the monetary penalty for not following it.
And they still couldn't get it done.
It's not that they couldn't get it done. It's the requests for funding to do the job have been blocked. And a judge declared that the city council refused to fund the cleanup of Memorial Field. That's a fact.
Okay.
So, but it's also a fact 4 years in the making. It's not that I just said, oh, you know what? It's now 2019. Let me do something about Memorial Field. No, we started with, hey, let's make sure we bring everybody together and present our options at Memorial Field, and let's show how we can do this together, where everybody can lift all boats.
Work our way back.
Work our way back, right? But that did not happen.
Right.
They blocked it every step of the way. Just so you have to ask yourself, why? Right? Why? If it's so important, why would they not fund it? Because politics. They don't want me to look good. They look bad. It hurts their chance for election. More importantly, it keeps the secret at Memorial Field. What was dumped there? We still don't know. I can't get access to the dollars to get the equipment to clean it up.
You said you would work your way back. The other two things I mentioned were the indictment. Do you believe that was retribution for cutting off power and all this other stuff?
It's more than that. When I brought to the attention of the Attorney General's office that millions of dollars were given away by the previous administration, some of which that went to very close associates of the former Attorney General, they hit me with a subpoena.
Well, that same Attorney General's office, I guess, was investigating you.
But that's the question. You have to look at the process there. And again, it becomes this, really scary feeling when you start exposing wrongdoing. The trend is they go after the citizen activist. And Human Rights Watch, they believe that this is a clear indication of how democracy is being undermined, because people that try to make the system better get attacked by the system that should be protecting them. So I just know that, I'm going to continue to keep the faith in the people, but my trust in the system is definitely shaken, because when you look at one Manhattan judge ruled that what the Attorney General did to me is illegal, out of their jurisdiction. And then another judge in another jurisdiction, Westchester County, appointed by Reggie Lafayette, all of a sudden says, we're going to go a different direction. We're going to ignore all these due process issues. So guess what? That's where you have to wonder who's really in control here, because where there's no connection to the politics, you get, a policy outcome. But when the politics enter, you get this situation. So just put on a scale. $13 million is missing from the city school district of Mount Vernon. We're talking about $12,900 in a campaign
Right.
that was basically financed by my credit card.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what to tell you. Okay.
So if you accept that, when you use your credit card, there's a high level of authentication. You are who you say you are, because there's a lot of systems in place to make sure that that system works, that every transaction is recorded, that transactions can be rolled back if they have to be. There's a lot of IT, frankly, around that process.
Right.
Voting looks like it did 40 or 50 years ago. And so there's an inherent irregularity to the whole thing. But then layer on, you can accept those basic facts. We're using paper to vote. We're still using paper to vote. Even if you shove it inside an electronic machine, it's still paper.
Right.
Right? You have to walk up. You don't present any identification, because this country doesn't believe in having to present identifying information at the polls for a whole bunch of historical reasons. So you don't have to actually prove at that moment that you are who you say you are. And you vote using this antiquated machine, which has inherent flaws, which are alluded to in your lawsuit and many, many other places.
Yep.
So at its best, the voting system has tremendous imperfections. You are saying that because it has imperfections, it can be used for it can be subverted intentionally by people who want to impact its outcome. Here in Mount Vernon, in Westchester, in New York State, the system is broken. You are saying, alleging in this lawsuit, that is happening, but the implications of it are, in this interview, that it's political corruption.
And that's where you just have to know that election law has been weaponized, and we have to carefully reflect on that. There were efforts to create fair campaigns in New York that went nowhere. I believe that there should be fair elections, and I do think that there are things we can do a lot differently that can help bring transparency to elections. For example, let's just say the red bag ballots.
Yeah.
They should be a policy or a law passed that requires, the poll workers to put on the wall how many red bag ballots there are. Like, use stick figures for all I care, but there should be some kind of quality control there. Be it the person that put it in the red bag, they should get some kind of receipt, and the person that has the red bag should have a counter receipt to verify that these people actually did vote. At a bare minimum.
Should voters have to prove who they are when they
I
show
think
up at the polls?
I think that there should be some form of authentication, because we're in a world now where you do have PayPal, you have Apple Pay, you have Bitcoin, and all these other forms of payment. And I think there is a template that can respect privacy, but also validate that you are who you are. Because when you see the usual suspects in Mount Vernon driving from poll location to poll location without, the little things like giving fruits or snacks to poll workers, that's typically what you do to kind of support the effort to make sure you congratulate people for being a part of the process and putting in their time for a very long day.
But voters get stickers.
Right, voters get stickers, right. But when you see them going from place to place looking, suspicious and disheveled, you wonder, what are they doing? Why are they driving around? Are they, voting in one district in one side of town, going to another? Because the rumor is there was a handful of people that were going to do this, because I got a phone call on Saturday, the Saturday before the election, that I was going to lose it by 204 votes. That's the phone call. I got it. And, and if I have to reveal the person, we may have to go down that road. But I'm just saying,
Mayor,
at the end of the day,
Mayor,
these things happened.
This is not the Bob Maroney show.
This ain't Bob Marone show. This is the Charlie Stern show.
I'm not John Bandler.
Yeah.
Okay. If you're going to bring up the mysterious phone call that you got the Saturday before the election, and the phone call went like this: Mayor, you're going to lose by 204 votes.
Yeah.
If you're going to bring that up, you know what my next question is going to be. I didn't bring it up.
Yeah. What's up?
You did. Who called you?
So we're gonna reveal that in the lawsuit.
Was it a phone call or a text?
It was a phone call.
And the phone call was on the Saturday before the Tuesday election.
Yeah, and and if the AG is tapping my phone, they have it too.
Was the phone call known, an individual known to you before you received the phone call?
Yeah.
Was the caller somebody familiar with elections and campaigns?
Yeah. Yeah. People, I mean, look, Mount Vernon has always been a small universe, but very well connected. And I just know that, we have, there's a lot at stake here.
And they specifically said 204 votes.
Oh, yeah.
Not 200,
204.
204.
Yep.
Well, I guess we're going to have to keep our eye on the July 17 court date that you have coming up to appear in front of a judge to talk about this election, because that's going to be fascinating. Mayor Thomas, who really runs Mount Vernon?
So this is where I'm pointing to. I just want to demonstrate that the decisions I've made have been for the people and by the people, ordinary people that want to save on their electric bill and their cable bill. But the cable bill has been stranded on the city council's desk since I put it there in 2016.
The cable bill is stranded. The electric bill is stranded. The lighting problem you alluded to earlier. The trucks don't roll. The gas bill isn't paid. You don't have access to the bank account.
Who was pushing back against the positive progress is politics, dirty politics. And you can see that it's coming from the Democratic Party, because they've been the dominant party for the past quarter century in Mount Vernon.
And you're saying that reaches all the way up to the Attorney General's office?
It must, because why am I a target? Why am I the only case in the state of New York that they're going after for election infractions that are dealt with administratively? Why? Why am I the only one? Mm-hmm. What did I do other than say, hey, we got to clean up Memorial Field. Hey, these sewers are broken and we should comply with, the Clean Water Act. But think about it. Okay, even if there were mistakes that I made, I take full responsibility. But give me a chance to fix it. Mm-hmm. But think about the context. Think about it. If I'm confronted with, the funding for a police commissioner being eliminated and 20 cops, and then I got a gang war going out, full bore right now, my focus shifts to trying to keep people safe. I focused on some things that I believe were very important, but meanwhile, the other things in life were happening. Add to it that I don't even have a staff. I'm a mayor without a staff. Mm-hmm. It's myself and 2 secretaries. Oh, you have all these commissioners. Wait a minute. They too don't have staff. They don't have administrative staff. So you just have to look around and see that this was set up in a way to give the appearance that, he has everything. But when you look closer, you're going to see all of these positions return with the next administration if we're unsuccessful in court to prove that the election was rigged.
Okay. You're going to be in court next week.
Mm-hmm.
And if the result of that trial...
I'm not sure if there's going to be a trial, because I can tell you right now, I don't know if I trust, this process right now. Just think about it. Put yourself in my shoes. Mm-hmm. You've seen willful obstruction. I got 6 different court orders, 5 of which are posted online, against the council for doing all sorts of stuff. I've been removed from the bank account. Just be pragmatic for a moment. You're getting, I was threatened with this before I became mayor. When I became mayor, it happened. So I'm just curious as to, what Monday is truly going to hold, because, again, I have a young family.
Yeah.
And, I'm not sure if I'm fully confident that I can even have a fair trial.
So let's say, the newspaper has alluded to the possibility of some type of a plea. And I really don't want to drill down into the gory details of the case, and I think that's more fair to you. What I am interested in probing is what the next 6 months could look like.
Mm-hmm.
So there's one
Looks like
scenario.
fun.
There's one scenario where you remain the mayor through December 31st. Based on what we know today of the election, there would be a transition, and the Mount Vernon would have a new mayor in January. That is sort of the simplest path to the next 6 months. But there's many other possible paths.
Right.
There's a path in which you negotiate a plea, and which would include pleading guilty to a felony, and you would have to leave office. And if you left office under the terms of the charter, there would have to be a special election. The first step, you would leave office. The president of the city council would become the interim mayor.
Mm-hmm. The cause of all the problems. Keep going.
Based on the timing, Mount Vernon would have to have a special election.
Mm-hmm.
And the winner of that special election would become the interim mayor to fill out the remainder of the current term. So from there's any number of possible scenarios. Mm-hmm. The president of the city council, who would become the immediate interim mayor, could run in that special election. He might not run in that special election. He might run uncontested. He might run contested. Sean Patterson Howard might run. She might not run. Someone else could run. There's a potential to have 2 new mayors between now and December 31st.
Right.
Any thoughts on those scenarios?
I say let's see what happens on Monday, because my view is you just have to look at this for what it is. Mount Vernon has been kept in chaos by a group of obstructionists. And they created this situation so they can try and swoop in and say they solved the problems over the past, they're going to come in and swoop in to solve the problems that they created. That's leadership theory 101. But this election that was just held on the 25th shows you that there's a significant amount of people in Mount Vernon that see the truth and know what this is. And what I know is people are going to be paying much closer attention to what goes on in their government now. And that's the most important item to take away, that people are woke and they're paying careful attention to what's happening. And if you look at how we had to govern, the decisions that always had to be made in some form of a crisis mode, I'd like to see any mayor in this country have to make decisions under the same set of circumstances. And what would they do? Mm-hmm. How did you get garbage trucks to roll without garbage trucks? How did you, make progress on getting $80 million from the MTA to replace these closed bridges that were closed for 10 years? And I just want to point to that as another example. That's $45 million in wages, mm-hmm. 350 jobs for ordinary people. Just that one set of projects. You add the sewers to it, it's another $200 million at cost. Because my belief deep down is that this previous administration, this deep state network of interests, this mm-hmm. deep state, they want control of the sewer project. But here's the spoiler. I requested a federal monitor, and I believe we got it approved. So no matter who's mayor, the big infrastructure projects are going to be monitored by a federal monitor. Mm-hmm. And you know what? What mayor that's corrupt wants a federal monitor on their back? So guess what? I have nothing to hide. I just know that it's very concerning to be young, black, and know that the statistics don't favor black people, especially executives, when you go into a courtroom full of just things that have the appearance of being biased.
Are you suggesting that the deep state is leveraging the inherent racism of the justice system?
I can only tell you that the numbers are the numbers. And when you look at the documentary When They See Us, mm-hmm. and you see the power of media exposing what actually happened, people, realize that there's something else going on. But guess what? The accountability will come in time.
The story you're telling is that a deep state of deeply political, behind-the-scenes political people are throwing you into the gears of the justice system to finish you off. Do you think that's what's happening?
That is what is happening. Because why else would a person that came in and accomplished a lot of good would get no mercy from the people that's supposed to protect the people?
You have an election attorney who's a very accomplished guy, Martin Connor.
Yeah.
Martin Connor was a New York State senator for 31 years.
Yeah.
And he's been a lawyer for over 40 years, and he specializes in election law. Tell me how it works. Were you in touch with him before the election?
Yes, and he, and you just laid it out, Martin.
How do you get access to guys like that?
Because real people recognize real people. And I thank Martin for taking me on, taking me seriously, and looking through the vortex of deception. And I think that his credibility, he wouldn't have put his name on the line to bring this if there weren't concrete examples of real issues.
But he doesn't work for free. Nobody does.
Yeah, no, I know that.
Who's paying for Martin Connor?
Right now, it's I believe the campaign committee's paying for him, and it's a worthy cause, and we're going to see where it goes.
So it's July 4th, 2019. Have you you have not conceded the election?
I want to see the numbers first. I want to get through that process. I want to know the truth.
Board of Elections announced numbers yesterday.
It's okay, but they still haven't given the details.
Okay.
Let's go into the details.
Will you come back and talk to me about the details at some point?
Yeah, when we have them.
All right.
I mean, we have enough concrete evidence to show that there were changes made between 18 and 19. We have enough of that. What we don't have is we want to see the scale of the changes on their end, because that will show you just how determined they were to stop Richard Thomas from serving the people of Mount Vernon.
So you're asking for a hand recount, and ultimately, what do you want? A fresh election?
Let's start with the truth. Let's start there. Let's start with the truth, and if the truth merits a new election, then fine. But right now, let's start with, did it happen or did it not happen? And once we verify that it did happen, we'll take it from there.
What if it didn't happen?
If it didn't happen, then I give credit to all the people that participated in the process. And, I will gracefully step back and say, look, just wanted to verify the facts. I didn't, discredit or disparage anybody with anything untrue. I credited Sean for running a great race. But nonetheless, there are questions that we just want to answer first before we say, all right, we're done.